Well, so this is Baruch Fleischman here with the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, and it's really my pleasure here too. I really like this material from this man, Haim Beinart, Hasidic Jew from Russia, who really devoted himself mostly to the study of what happened in Spain and the Spanish Jews, Sephardic Jews, even though this person is came from a Hasidic family in Russia. But this was his interest, as perhaps a lot of people, exiles from Spain, wound up in Lithuania and Russia and places like that as a result of their exile. So here we come to new step. Arabian conquest and the rise of Islam. This is from the year 622, approximately 1 century to the year 721. Now we'll get into this map a little bit more, but before we do that, let's come over and read what this man, I guess it's Dr. Beinart, has to tell us. He says, now came the turn of the Jewish clans in the southern half of the peninsula and the oasis. This stage of the war, that is the war of Islam or Muhammad against the Jews, is reflected in the text of an agreement containing promises given by Muhammad to the Samuel ben Adiyah family, in return for an undertaking by the family to pay a poll tax and an annual fixed amount of food products. Muhammad now adopted a policy different from the one used against the Jews of Hijaz and Khaybar. He declared that one must not coerce Jews and Christians to accept the new faith, and ordered his officers and tax collectors to limit themselves to taking a poll tax, which is called apparently the jizya, and a land tax, which is called the cargo or karach. So he says the majority of Jews were at that time concentrated in the Yemen area, and also those in the north, who joined their brethren in the south, were the ones who renewed contacts with the Babylonian Gaonim, and subsequently with the secular and religious leaders of the Jewish Egyptian community. Others emigrated to Palestine after it was conquered by the armies of Islam. After Muhammad's death in the year 632, his successors continued their conquest and expansion. Knowledge of the map of the world of the period is one of the keys to understanding the fate of Judaism, which was, from now on, poised between the two world powers, which were who? Islam and Christianity. So let's take a look at this map. The blue area apparently represents Muhammad's conquests, and all of that is Muhammad has done throughout the North Africa. Right, here's Egypt, so you can go right into Tripoli, etc., Tangier, etc., and even into most of Spain. Okay, and then at the same time, though, you have this area called Byzantium. Byzantium is what's left of Byzantium, because Turkey, which is right here, was, well, I guess part of Turkey. This is Turkey right here, I guess. And this is going to Greece, and then to what they call the Balkans, up into this area, and also in there. All of this is part of Byzantium. Now, I guess what he's presenting as white are the areas that are not Christian, not at this time, and not Muslim either. So now we have an idea. Let's see how far the conquests of Muhammad went. And so we have different colors, but I'm just lumping them all together at this time. He says if we get a chance, maybe on the next map there'll be more to be able to be seen. But let's go all the way over here. This is Samarkand. Samarkand, I think, is Uzbekistan. So they're all the way to Uzbekistan. Kabul is Afghanistan, and goes down into Kandahar, another part of Afghanistan. Just throw this out there. Another part of Afghanistan. So here we have the eastern boundary. And then, of course, Arabia. And then we're coming over to Persia, all the way through this area over here. Herat is also part of today's Afghanistan, and etc. They went all the way up to the border of Turkey, all the way across South Africa, and as I said before, even into Spain. So that gives you an idea of the whole map of this time in this period between 622, 721. Byzantium, which is a powerful country at that time, has been whittled away by the Persians and by now ultimately by the Arabians, and whacked to pieces. Let's go here. Let's go down here and see what's going on. Islam continued to dominate the Arabian Peninsula, conquering Damascus, Babylonian, and Persia. The Arabs invaded Palestine in the year 634, and I think we're gonna pick up a map with some ideas over there. Maybe not. That's a different map. So he says, so the Arabs invaded Palestine. This is Palestine. Where is Palestine? Over here, up here. Here it is. In the year 634, and by February had already reached the gates of Gaza, defeating the Byzantine army in 636. Jerusalem, still held by the Byzantines, was besieged in the year 637, and in April 638, surrendered to Caliph Omar. In 640, Caesarea, the last Byzantine foothold in Palestine, was taken. The Islamic armies continued their drive through Egypt and North Africa, and in 711 crossed the straits separating Europe and Africa. Now let me get over here and see if I can bring this around. It's a big book on a small desk. Here we come. And Africa. So they invaded Africa, as we pointed out. So they went across Africa, invading and conquering the Iberian Principle, and as we see over here in the map right here, they even went as far as there is Spain today. Saragossa, there's a couple of names, and Tangier at the bottom. So he says, it was clear that the Jews belonged to the dhimmi class. Now, let me see if I got this right. Yeah, they did right. They crossed the Pyrenees, but were defeated in battle near Tours. It was Poitiers, apparently, at that place. It's a place in, well, actually, it is here. So you're in France now. So they went all the way into this area and attempted to conquer that as well. He says, it was clear, so excuse me, let me go back. They crossed the Pyrenees, but were defeated in the battle near Tours, and their advance was halted. It was clear, straighten this up here a little bit, that the Jews belonged to the, I pronounce it, the dhimmi class, the protected people. They were protected people. Why? By virtue of being Jews. Just by being Jews, they had to be separated. Relationships with them were therefore determined by the agreements concluded by Muhammad and the practice at that time, which we said before is half of your crops and a poll tax. However, relations were greatly influenced by the political and social developments in the caliphates. The Jews tend to live in separate streets, but in this they were not different from members of other faiths. In the Arab city of Fez, for example, which is in Morocco, we have a picture of that over here, probably, but I can't get it all on the screen right now. Muslims from Kairouan lived in one street, and Muslims on Andalusia, which is Spain, lived in another street, and each community had its own mosque. The Jewish quarter was in the northern part of the city, but there was no fixed Muslim legislation requiring Jews to reside in separate quarters. And if such legislation did exist, the Muslims as a minority would have segregated themselves in their own quarters. Now, I'm not sure that I followed how it is that the Muslims were in a minority at that time. I thought we were talking about an area that was all Muslim with some Jews in it. But let's go on. However, in their own quarters, Muslims made sure that the churches and synagogues were built no higher than mosques, and that Muslim houses were no lower than the houses of their neighbors. Segregation exists in the bathhouses, and in many cities separate Jewish bathhouses were built, like in Girona, Granada, and elsewhere. Heavy punishment was meted out for sexual intercourse between members of different communities, and mixed marriages were strictly forbidden unless the non-Muslim converted to Islam. Muslims were forbidden to bequeath anything to the infidel. Jews were infidels, of course. In general, dhimmi children, that's the children of these protected children, in other words, the children of Jews, who converted to Islam, lost their right of inheritance, and the father of a converted daughter was not entitled to marry her off and therefore receive her mohar. Now let me go over that again. In general, dhimmi children who converted to Islam. So let's say your child converted, became a Muslim. they lost their right of inheritance. That is, they lost the right of inheritance from their Jewish father. And the father of a converted daughter, and if the daughter converted, was not entitled to marry her off. He was not able to marry her off, and as a result of that, the mohar apparently was a premium that the husband gave to the father of the bride. Different customs, different places. The superior status of Islam over other religions was further emphasized by distinctions in type and color of clothing. Over the generations, the Muslims added an increasing number of prohibitions and limitations. This is Baruch Fleischman. It's been the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, and we're getting closer as we're moving along now. We're going to move into Europe as we saw the spread of Islam.